Are you ready to sell yourself for money? This question echoed in Dina's mind as she put on the white dress that looked more like a prisoner's uniform than a bride's gown. In the staff room of the hotel where she had worked for over 4 years, the smell of burnt oil and other people's lives filled the air. She wasn't dreaming of a prince or waiting for a miracle, but she never imagined she would find herself caught between her mother's 4 drip in the cardiac unit and a contract with a complete stranger who offered millions for a fake marriage. Dina wasn't the type to complain. She lived with her mother in a 2-room apartment. Her father had been gone since she was 14, left to get bread, and disappeared into another marriage. Dina's life was predictable. Wake up, rush out, work, come back, do laundry. But one day, this rhythm was shattered. Her mother had a heart attack at the bus stop. 2 days later, a doctor came into the room with tightly pressed lips. He spoke tersely, but avoided eye contact. The news was grim. Surgery was urgent, or her mother wouldn't last more than 2 weeks. The cost, nearly 1 million rubles. Dina had 8,000 on her card. The next day, she received a letter. No name, no signature, just 2 paragraphs. A contract is being offered. A fake marriage with a man. Term, 9 months. Your task is to accompany him to official events and live with him as a spouse. Intimacy is not required. Payment, 3 million rubles. The money will be transferred to your account immediately after signing and registering the marriage. If you agree, tomorrow at 11 a.m. at the Sadko Hotel, room 288, bring your passport. No phones. Dina read the letter 4 times. At first, she thought it was a joke. Then, she thought it might be a trap. But then, she looked at her mother's pale fingers in the tubes, and she stopped thinking. The man waiting for her in the room was named Mansour. He spoke Russian with an accent, was polite, but didn't smile. He said he represented the interests of a person whose name he could not reveal for confidentiality purposes. He offered her the contract. Everything was laid out clearly. A fake marriage, no risk to her life, but serious commitments. Living in the same space, attending photo shoots, dinners, business events. Silence, under threat of a lawsuit. Money would be transferred to her account within 3 days after the marriage registration. Everything would be legally formalized. Her passport was needed to complete the marriage. Dina asked, "Who is he?" "The one I have to marry." Mansour shrugged. "It's not your concern. The main thing is you're needed, and urgently. Do you agree?" She was silent. Her breath quickened. It was frightening, but it was more terrifying to see her mother growing weaker each day. "Yes," she said quietly but firmly. "I agree." The wedding was in 2 days, in a mansion outside Moscow. Everything looked expensive. Fresh flowers, a dress straight from the runway. She was driven there in a black Audi with tinted windows. The driver was silent. The music playing was Arabic, tense, haunting. She saw Karim 5 minutes before the registration. He was tall, with dark skin and sharp cheekbones. He wore a white suit, had perfect posture, and was calm. He said nothing, just looked her in the eye. No emotion, as if checking if she would break. After the registration, there was a brief cocktail reception, mostly for show. A photographer, 2 elderly women, and a bald man in a gray jacket. Probably someone from security. No one spoke. It all felt like a dream. In the evening, you will spend the night in the room, as husband and wife, just for appearances. In the morning, you will be given access to the new residence. There will be no turning back from there. Mansour informed them as he led them to the elevator. The room was on the top floor. A massive bed, a view of the nighttime city. Karim remained silent. He took off his jacket, placed his phone on the table, and went to the bathroom. Then there was a muffled thud. Dina flinched. Then 2 quick clicks. The bathroom door opened, but Karim was gone. Only his phone remained, flashing an unsent message. The screen read, "If they take me, find Nur. He's the only one who knows." Footsteps approached outside the door. Dina froze, and in that moment, she realized this was just the beginning. Before Dina could even exhale, a group of people entered the room. 2 security guards and several men in suits. They came in without knocking. Their eyes showed no surprise or confusion. They quickly scanned the room, checked her bags, even looked in the bathroom where Karim had apparently been only moments ago. No traces, except for an empty glass and scattered belongings. "Where is he?" asked one of the security guards, a tall man with sharp features. His voice was tense and authoritative. "I don't know," Dina almost exclaimed. "He disappeared. I didn't hear anything." But her words didn't seem to affect them. They kept searching, moving through the rooms until two men in sharp suits arrived. One of them, with a beard and dark glasses, came up to Dina directly. "Are you saying you don't know where our son is?" "Where's our Karim?" he asked, his voice dripping with disdain. "I don't know, really." Dina stepped back, feeling her chest tighten. "I just signed the contract. I don't know him. Everything happened so fast." "Yes, of course," he smirked, giving her a distrustful look. "The usual story. We'll have to notify the police. This could end with your deportation." Panic surged within her. He was right. She was nobody, a simple waitress who had been used. But how? Why had her life suddenly become so intertwined with this man whom she barely knew? But there was no time to think. At that moment, the door opened and a man in a business suit entered. It was Nur, the lawyer. "Enough with the threats," Nur said calmly, turning to the guards. "Go. I'll take her for questioning." "But Mr. Nur," one of the guards protested, "she needs to be detained. She might be involved in the kidnapping." "You seem to have forgotten who you're dealing with," Nur replied, flashing a restrained smile. "This girl has nothing to do with my client's disappearance. Stop playing detective." Nur turned to Dina. "You're under my control. Let's go. We need to talk." With his appearance, the tension in the room loosened somewhat. But Dina still couldn't shake the feeling that her life had just become part of someone else's game. In the hallway, the lawyer stopped and turned to her. "So, tell me everything from the beginning." His voice was calm, almost relaxed. "Your story has to match the statements of all the witnesses. Otherwise, I'll be forced to leave you for trial, if you want." Dina swallowed hard. The weight of the situation was unbearable. What could she say? She had just signed a contract. Everything was going according to plan until Karim disappeared. She couldn't believe his disappearance was part of some dirty game. "I don't know anything about him," she almost whispered, deciding to admit the truth. He didn't tell me anything about himself. I didn't know who he really was." It all felt like a bad movie. Nur listened carefully, paying close attention to every word. When she finished, he raised his eyebrows thoughtfully. "Very interesting," he said, as if pondering aloud. "We thought you knew more. But in reality, Karim, as it turns out, isn't who he says he is. His passport is fake. We don't even know which country he's really from." Dina felt her heart skip a beat. This meant one thing. He wasn't the person he appeared to be. But who was he? Why were his documents fake? Nur noticed her reaction and added, "Perhaps that's the answer to why he was kidnapped. Or maybe someone just used your naivety to cover their tracks. We'll find out who it is soon. In the meantime, stay with us. You won't be able to leave anyway." Nur looked at her as if he knew she would become part of his plan, no matter what she thought about it. "If you want to help, tell us what you know about him," he suggested. Dina remained silent, but her thoughts began to drift toward the direction she had long avoided. Karim was someone else, and that someone was now in the hands of whoever had decided to take him. But how could she trust this man? Dina sat in a luxurious living room, feeling completely out of place. Surrounding her were rich carpets, antique furniture, paintings in gilded frames. Everything was elegant, yet lifeless, like a museum. Mansour had left again, and Nur returned holding the contract. He placed it on the table in front of her, like it was just another document. "Sign it, and everything proceeds as agreed. The money has already been transferred to your account," Nur said, not even looking up. Dina couldn't believe what was happening. She opened her banking app, and it was real. 3 million rubles. More than she'd ever imagined having in her entire life. It was done. Her mother's surgery would be paid for. But what now? Who was she in this house? Among people who didn't understand her and didn't even seem interested in seeing her as a human being. She read the contract, but the words began to blur. The terms were clear. 9 months of a marriage with Karim. No romantic relationship, no emotions. All she had to do was appear at events, live in a house, and play the role of a wife. Everything else irrelevant. She signed it. Feeling the cold pressure of the pen against her fingers like metal handcuffs she had put on herself. A few days later, she moved into the house. It was guarded like a fortress. Tall stone walls, private security at every corner. She couldn't leave without permission. She felt like a prisoner in a palace. And with every step through the vast hallways, the walls felt like they were closing in. She couldn't call her mother. She couldn't step outside. She couldn't simply exist as herself. The first few days passed in silence. Dina wandered through the empty corridors, unsure of what to do. Nur kept an eye on her, reminding her the rules she had agreed to. He explained that if she violated even one condition, the money would be forfeited and she'd be kicked out immediately. One day, something caught her attention in one of the rooms. On a shelf, among books and collectible figurines, she noticed an old suitcase. Opening it, she discovered Karim's personal belongings, photos, letters, notes. Everything was hidden away with great care. In the photos, Karim looked entirely different. No suit, no polished demeanor. He was surrounded by friends, relaxed, smiling. In one picture, he stood next to a woman, someone Dina didn't recognize from social media. These weren't recent photos. They came from a different place, a different life. Among the letters, she found some strange notes written in Russian. There weren't many, but every word seemed to carry weight. They mentioned something about the operation, though without detail. One letter stood out. It was addressed to someone named George. It spoke of betrayal. It also said, the plan will still work. Dina doesn't know anything. Dina couldn't make sense of it. She put the letters aside and shut down Karim's laptop, but one thought kept swirling in her head. What was this man hiding? Why was he living a double life? And why was she pulled into it? She began searching for answers. Suspicion stirred inside her, and she could no longer view this house as just a place to live. It was a trap. Karim may not have been the man he presented himself to be. And what if she wasn't just a fake wife, but a pawn in a far bigger scheme? By then, it felt too late to turn back. She was in too deep, possibly at the very center of something enormous, something she had never agreed to. The questions were piling up. Who was Karim, really? And how was Dina supposed to survive in a place built entirely on secrets? Dina could feel the cold fingers of suspicion tightening around her throat. Every detail in Karim's house now seemed like part of a bigger puzzle she had to solve. The encrypted documents on his computer haunted her. It was as if Karim had known someone might one day go looking for the truth, and Dina decided she wouldn't stay passive. If she wanted to understand who this man really was, she had to take action. Not knowing who she could trust, she remembered a name mentioned once by a former co-worker, a hacker with a Russian accent named Igor. He was said to be reliable, someone who specialized in wiping and cracking sensitive data. He could decrypt anything for a price. There was no time to hesitate. She sent Igor a message asking for help unlocking the files, leaving only the faintest digital trail. The response came quickly. Yes, I can help, but it'll cost you. Without thinking twice, Dina transferred the money. It was a fraction of the $3 million she had received, but enough to get something valuable. Soon after, Igor sent back decrypted files. And they weren't just letters and pictures. One document contained a list of transactions. Another included coded communications, hinting at links to government figures and intelligence agencies. Dina read through them, and with every line it became clearer. Karim wasn't just some wealthy mystery man. He had a secret past, one that reached deep into dangerous territory. The documents clearly suggested that Karim had once been involved in covert operations. He had worked for an intelligence service years ago and then disappeared, assuming a new identity. Everything around him now, his lifestyle, his wealth, was a cover. His family, the same one she had met briefly, didn't even know. They truly believed he was the heir to a powerful business empire in the Middle East. Dina's eyes landed on a photo of Karim with what looked like an elder relative, both smiling against a backdrop of an ancient stone palace. Her chest tightened. This was a world she had never imagined being part of. A world where she was no more than a pawn. Karim had used her to paint the picture of a loving wife, but she was never meant to see behind the curtain. Then another message arrived from Igor. His family knows nothing. He's hiding his true past. They think he's their blood. But it's all a lie. He's not who he says he is. Dina stared at the screen, her head spinning. She remembered how Karim had said nothing at their wedding, how she had been warned repeatedly to follow the contract's terms, but no one had explained why. She wasn't chosen by chance. She was never meant to matter, just to fulfill a role. Dina closed the laptop and sat on the edge of the bed. Now she knew too much. But what could she do with that knowledge? Did she even want to keep playing this game? Or should she walk away while she still could? Then came one final message from Igor, this one blunt and without encryption. Listen, I've done my part. Now you need to understand who you are. If you want out, leave fast. If you stay, you're playing by their rules. And remember, Karim isn't the man you thought he was. He's doing all of this for himself. Her world was crumbling. She had been drawn into a web of ambition and deceit. And now, whether she liked it or not, she was stuck in it. She had to find a way out. But how? The questions burned in her mind. Who was Karim really? Why had they dragged her into this? And what was she supposed to do now with this dangerous truth? Dina looked once more at the screen, at the photo of Karim smiling, his eyes holding none of the warmth she once believed in. Dina woke to the low buzz of her phone. A new message from Igor. You'll receive a video. He explains everything. Below the message was a file. Her hands trembled as she inserted the flash drive into Karim's laptop. Something deep inside warned her that what she was about to see would change everything, but she had no choice. If she didn't figure this out, everything would be lost. Inside the folder was a video file. She clicked play. Karim appeared on the screen. His face was different. Tired, worn, stripped of the calm facade she'd grown used to. The ever-present suit, his precise grooming, his cold posture were all still there, but his eyes, they held something she hadn't seen before. A raw edge of fear. He took a deep breath and began speaking. His voice was low and steady, just like always. Dina, if you're watching this, it means I've either been killed or taken. I can't tell you what's happening. All I can do is warn you. Don't trust anyone who says I'm guilty. Trust only me. If you're watching this, it means I can't be by your side. But remember, everything I've done was to protect you. You're part of this now. Because I couldn't let you be just a pawn. But you don't know the full truth. He paused, as if choosing his next words carefully. The fear in his eyes wasn't the fear of death. It was something heavier. I'm not the man you thought I was. Everything you've seen is just the surface, he continued. You're in a trap now, and I can't give you a way out. But you might be able to find one. To do that, you need to understand who I really am. And before you make any moves, you must accept this. You're part of the game. In this game, your life means nothing to them. He went on, naming people Dina didn't recognize. Strange names, foreign names, some of them likely powerful. His face became increasingly tense as he spoke. Find Vera, he said, looking straight into the camera. She's the only one who knows the truth. She was my partner. Don't believe anyone who tries to control your decisions. I use you to cover up the truth. But now, you need to be stronger than that. The screen went dark. Dina sat frozen. Her heart was pounding so hard, she could feel it in her throat. Everything she thought she knew about Karim had just collapsed. This wasn't about a contract anymore. She had been pulled into something so much deeper. But why her? Why had she been chosen for this elaborate lie? And who was this Vera? As panic began to take over, it was replaced by something else. Focus. Cold, clear determination. She had no choice now. She had to find Vera. She picked up her phone and began searching. There was nothing obvious, no public profiles, no job listings. But luck was on her side. An old message thread on a forgotten account revealed Vera as one of Karim's former colleagues, now living in a different part of the city. Dina had a single mission now. Find her. Vera was the only key to Karim's mystery, and possibly Dina's own salvation. She threw on a jacket, grabbed her bag, and left the house. Security was stationed downstairs, but she didn't care. She wasn't going to be stopped. Not now. The address led to an old building, hidden in a quiet backstreet. No signs, no markings. She knocked. The door creaked open. Standing there was a woman who didn't look a day over 40. Vera. Her gaze was sharp and cautious. But when she saw Dina, her expression softened into something like relief. You came. You finally came, Vera said, stepping aside to let her in. Dina entered, unsure what to expect, but fully aware that the real fight was only just beginning. Dina sat curled up in the corner of Vera's small apartment, surrounded by faded maps and piles of handwritten notes. Vera stood by the window, eyes fixed on the empty street outside. Their plan was simple. Track down one of the men connected to Karim's disappearance. But Dina knew every move they made was a step closer to danger, and there was no turning back. This isn't just some random kidnapping, Vera said, still staring out. It's a network, and Karim is the key. We have to find the people behind this. We need to reach his inner circle. Dina tried to stay focused, but her thoughts kept drifting. Karim's so-called family, or the people pretending to be, had begun pressuring her. Subtle warnings. Cold stares. One even followed her for 3 blocks in silence. She felt it tightening around her like a net. After hours of digging through data, Vera pulled up a photo on her phone and showed it to Dina. It was a man mid-40s, stern face, dressed in a tailored suit. His name was Aziz, one of Karim's senior advisors, deeply tied to shady deals and covert operations. He knows where Karim is, Vera said firmly. If we can get to him, we'll get answers. But just as they were laying out a route to find him, everything took a dark turn. Dina received a message from Mansour, the security handler who had originally given her the contract. It was short but chilling. You were warned. Stop digging. There will be consequences. Her breath caught. She knew what it meant. She was no longer just in the way. She had become a threat. They wanted her silenced. She barely made it back to Vera's apartment before it happened. There was a knock at the door. 2 men, faces hidden by masks. Dina didn't even have time to scream. They grabbed her, yanked her into the hallway, and shoved her into a dark van. Her heart was pounding so loud it drowned everything else out. The vehicle sped down tight city streets. One of the men reached for her throat. But before he could grab her, chaos exploded outside. From nowhere, Vera appeared. She had followed them, holding a heavy metal pipe. She smashed it against the kidnapper's head. He went down with a grunt. The second man turned, pulling a gun. Too slow. Vera was already moving. She drew his attention just long enough for Dina to wriggle free. Dina lunged. Together, they fought back. The second man struggled, but he wasn't ready for 2 women fighting for their lives. He was overwhelmed. As he dropped, moaning, Vera grabbed Dina's hand. We need to go. Now. They ran. Down side alleys, through back lots, until finally they reached a crumbling apartment building on the edge of the city. An abandoned flat, Vera's emergency hideout. You need to be more careful, Vera said, locking the door behind them. These people don't forgive mistakes. And now that you're in this, they won't stop. You're part of it, whether you like it or not. Dina collapsed into a chair, lungs burning. But in her eyes now burned something else. Fury and a new clarity. I can't stop, she said, voice hoarse but certain. I have to find him. I have to know why this happened. Why I was dragged into it. And I'm not backing down. Vera looked at her with quiet admiration. Dina didn't have training, connections, or experience. But she had something just as strong, resolve. And sometimes that was the most dangerous weapon of all. Karim's rescue was no longer a mission she was forced into. It had become personal. And she was ready to fight. Dina walked down the narrow corridor, lit only by the dull orange glow of a flickering street lamp outside. Her footsteps echoed softly as she followed Vera into a place that felt like it belonged to a different world. An abandoned building in one of the city's forgotten neighborhoods. The walls were cracked, the air cold and weightless. But somewhere behind these closed doors was the answer Dina had been chasing. When the door finally creaked open, he was there, Karim. He was alive, but he wasn't the same man she remembered. He stood in silence, his gaze distant and unreadable. Gone was a confident figure in a designer suit, the controlled presence she'd seen on their wedding day. This version of Karim looked hollow, tired, as though something inside him had been shattered and hastily glued back together. "You're alive," Dina whispered, her voice catching between relief and fear. "They said you were kidnapped, that someone tried to kill you." Karim didn't speak. He took a step forward, but kept his distance. His voice, when it finally came, was flat and detached. "You have to forget everything," he said, as if giving an order. "Walk away, Dina. Erase this from your memory." Her heart clenched. This wasn't what she'd expected. She had imagined answers, an apology, a reason, but instead, he looked at her like she was just another casualty in a war. He had no time to explain. "You don't get to say that," Dina replied, her voice shaking but steady. "I'm not leaving until you tell me the truth. You dragged me into this. You made me your wife, even if it was just a contract. You don't get to pretend none of it mattered. I need to know who you really are and why you did this." Karim blinked slowly, as if processing words he didn't want to hear. Then, something shifted in his expression, just slightly, a shadow of doubt, maybe guilt. He looked away, then back again, softer this time. "Everything I did, it was part of a plan," he said. "Marrying you gave me cover. It bought me time to disappear. That's all it was supposed to be." Dina flinched. So it had been true. She was just a shield, a placeholder, a fake. "I was a tool," she said quietly, bitterly. "You never once thought I might be a person, someone who could get hurt." Karim paused. For the first time, he seemed to hesitate, not as a strategist, but as a man caught between the consequences of his choices and the woman standing before him. "I didn't think you'd stay," he admitted. "Not after the wedding, not after what happened. But you did, and you kept digging, and you weren't supposed to care." Silence stretched between them. Dina's hands trembled at her sides. "And you?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Did you care? Or was that part of the plan too?" Karim finally stepped closer, close enough that she could see the lines of exhaustion on his face. When he spoke again, his voice was low. "I didn't want to feel anything," he said. "But I did. You were the one thing I didn't plan for, and maybe the only thing that ever felt real." Dina felt the weight of his words settle over her, pressing into her chest like a storm. Part of her wanted to scream. Part of her wanted to run. But another part, a quieter, deeper part, believed him. Still, belief wasn't enough. "You lied to me," she said, her voice tight. "You used me." "I know," Karim said, and his eyes looked more human than ever before. "And I can't undo that. But I want to try again. No lies, no contracts, just us." Dina looked at him, her throat thick with emotion. "This isn't over," she said. "Not by a long shot. But if there's going to be an us, then it starts with the truth. Every single word of it." Karim nodded slowly. And for the first time, there was no game behind his eyes. Only a man ready to come clean. Dina sat across from Karim in a dim, nearly empty room. A single lamp cast flickering light on his face, forming soft shadows beneath his eyes. He didn't look like a man in control anymore. He didn't look like someone pulling strings behind the scenes. He looked lost. He was no longer a mystery, no longer just a manipulator. He was a man with secrets, a man running from something. And now, perhaps a man who regretted what he had done. "I always thought I could hide forever," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "That I didn't need anyone. That no one could ever know who I really was." Dina listened, arms folded tightly, heart pounding. She wasn't sure which parts of his words to believe anymore. She wanted to trust him, but her mind kept circling back to every lie, every moment she had been used. Still, the look in his eyes now was different. It wasn't cold. It was broken. "You weren't the man you pretended to be," she said firmly. "You used me to disappear. You let me get tangled in something I didn't even understand. And now, you expect me to believe this wasn't all just part of your plan?" Karim looked away. He couldn't meet her eyes. I was part of something much bigger than I could control, he admitted. Government contracts. Undercover work. They recruited me when I was young, offered power, protection. I thought I could get out when I was done. I was wrong. You don't just walk away from that kind of life. His fingers curled slightly, like he was holding something invisible between them. You were never meant to be involved. I chose you because you were clean, innocent, someone who wouldn't ask questions. I thought I could keep it all separate, but I couldn't. Dina could feel the old bitterness rising again. So everything between us, the wedding, the moments we shared, it was all fake? Karim finally looked up, and for the first time, he didn't look guarded. No, he said, that's the part one didn't plan. You surprised me. You stayed when you had every reason to run. And I started to feel something I haven't felt in years. Real connection. Real guilt. She shook her head, the hurt in her chest too much to contain. You say you care, but you still won't give me the full truth, she said. You talk in riddles. Half explanations. I don't want your apologies. I want honesty. He took a step forward. Carefully. Slowly. Then here's the truth, he said. I don't know what I feel. I've been lying for so long. I don't know where the lies end and I begin. But when I look at you, I feel something real, something terrifying, and I don't want to lose it. Dina stood still, heart racing. She could see it now, the conflict in his eyes, the tremor in his voice. This wasn't a con. It wasn't manipulation. This was a man who had finally reached his edge. She asked the question she had been holding back. Do you love me? Karim hesitated. Then, softly, I don't know what love is anymore. But if this feeling, this need to protect you, to be near you, to start over is love, then maybe yes. Maybe I do. His hand brushed against her cheek. And in that brief touch, Dina felt every wall begin to shake. Not because she fully trusted him, but because a part of her still believed people could change. Their lips met. It was hesitant, raw, real, and when they pulled apart, the world felt different. But the danger hadn't disappeared. It was still there, lurking just outside the walls. We can't stop now, she said quietly. We're still being hunted. And if they find us, they won't give us a second chance. Karim nodded. Then we don't run. We fight. She looked into his eyes. No more masks. No more half-truths. Then we fight together, she said. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were choosing each other. And the game was far from over. 9 months had passed. The day Dina had counted down to dreaded, anticipated, question had finally arrived. The contract was officially over. She sat alone in her apartment, the one she used to call home, staring at the silent phone on the table. The money had come through. All the terms had been fulfilled. No one owed anyone anything anymore. She expected Karim to offer her another silent deal, one more transaction for her silence. But she was no longer the same woman who had walked into that hotel room months ago. When the doorbell rang, she already knew it was him. Karim stood at the door, but he was different. No tailored suit, no bodyguards. He wore jeans and a plain shirt, looking like any man who had spent too many sleepless nights thinking about the things he could never undo. You're here to offer me money, Karim? She asked without getting up. Her voice was calm, measured. Let me guess, you want to buy my silence again? He didn't speak, just looked at her, serious, hesitant, then stepped inside. You could have just disappeared, she said, her tone flat. You could have vanished like you always do. But you didn't. You came back. Why? Karim sat down beside her, leaving space between them. His eyes didn't meet hers right away. I didn't come to pay you, he said. I came to tell you the truth. I was supposed to leave, to disappear, but I couldn't. You were supposed to be a shield, a tool, but you became something else. Someone I didn't want to lose. Dina stayed quiet. Her chest tightened. His words dug into places she had tried to seal shut. So now what? She finally asked. You think saying that makes it all okay? You think I forgot the lies, the manipulation, the way you used me like a piece on a chessboard? Karim's expression faltered. For the first time, he looked truly ashamed. "You're right," he said. "I lied. I used you. I put you in danger. And I hate that I did. But I want to try again with no lies. No contracts. Just us. If you'll let me." She wanted to scoff, to tell him to get out. But instead, all she could feel was the heavy weight of everything they had been through. And the truth, she still cared. That didn't mean she trusted him. But the part of her that had fought, searched, and bled for answers, it wanted to believe. "You can offer me all the money in the world," she said. "But I won't stay quiet. I'm done being bought. If there's going to be anything between us, it has to be real, honest. And if you ever lie to me again, I'll walk. No warnings. No goodbyes." Karim nodded slowly. "That's fair. That's more than fair. I'm not asking you to forget the past. I'm just asking for a chance to build something that isn't fake." She studied him. For a long moment, there was silence between them. And then quietly, "Okay." His eyes widened, unsure if he had heard her right. "We can try," Dina said. "But this time there are no more roles. No more masks. No more deals. It's you and me. If you want something real, you'll have to earn it." Karim let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. And for the first time, there was no tension in the air. Just possibility. They weren't healed. They weren't whole. But they were honest. And that was a start.